What's going on, my friends? Welcome to episode 136 of the Money Peach podcast. I'm Chris Peach. I'm your host, and you can find this podcast or this show anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can find it in iHeartRadio, Spotify. You can find it in the Apple Podcasts. You can also find this podcast or this show on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being here today. And I'm excited because today we're talking about something that I don't talk about often, but I think it's important. And that is a little thing called affluenza. Yes, affluenza, not influenza, not affluence. It's a combination of both terms, affluent and influenza. There's a book that came out in the early 2000s. There's actually a documentary that came out in the late 90s that termed or coined the phrase affluenza, meaning it's the damage done to our health, our families, our communities, and our environment by the obsessive quest for material gain. So you think about that. Yeah, it makes sense. I think all of us would agree that we like stuff. I'm not saying you like stuff and I don't. I'll sit here and tell you all day long that Andrea and I, my wife, we love stuff. But why do we love stuff so much? And why is it that we love stuff so much, but in the past, there wasn't as much love for the stuff as in the 50s as it is today? We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then at the end of this episode, I'm going to break down some of the things you can do to curb yourself from affluenza, curb yourself from the constant possession of wealth or material gains, okay? And then also, I put together a cheat sheet PDF download that I'm going to give you guys. It's a tool that Andrea and I use to kind of walk us through whether or not we make a purchase or not. It's pretty cool. You're going to like it, and we'll share that with you. But so first things first, affluenza is not just a catchy phrase. It's not just a term that I read in a book or on a documentary. This is actually now a true definition. It's in the dictionary. And one of the reasons why is if you go back just a few years ago to 2013, maybe you remember this, but there was a young kid, 16 years old, lived in Texas. His name was Ethan Couch. And Ethan was very, very privileged as far as his family had amassed major amounts of wealth. And so he was very affluent. And so Ethan kind of had this sense to him that he was invincible because of the amount of money that his family had. And so Ethan went out, got in his car, had a couple beers, had a couple more beers. And unfortunately, Ethan went out and he killed 4 people that day in his vehicle. Now, at 16 years old, he killed 4 people. He had a defense attorney, and the defense attorney claimed that Ethan suffered from something called affluenza, not just a phrase from a book or a documentary. Now, this was real. And the judge sided with the defense, and instead of doing any jail time, Ethan got 10 years of probation because of his affluenza. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to sit here and talk on the podcast on the show today about how to get out of a crime because of affluenza. I'm talking about the other side of it is how do we curb our affluenza? Because we all have a little bit of it. Believe it or not, Andrea and I have a lot of it. And the reason why we do these types of podcasts, the reason why I like to talk on this subject is not to point fingers at all of you and say, hey, you need to get it together. It's for me as well, because we live in a world where it's constantly more, bigger, better, faster, whatever it is, nicer. We want it now, and we have the opportunity to get it now, okay? So before we jump in, let me share a little bit of the background and the numbers for you, because I think it's going to shock you, okay? So I did some digging on affluenza, and I found something that was really peculiar. Did you know that every year they do a study or a survey, and it bases on our level of happiness? What makes us happy and how happy are we? The peak of our happiness was actually in 1957. So in the 1950s, Americans were the happiest they had ever been. From that point forward, unfortunately, it's kind of depressing. We have gone downwards in our level of happy. Fast forward to 2020. And yeah, I'll agree. It's kind of hard to be as happy as I would have been in the 1950s because we have things like COVID and everything else going on, and it's election time. And I get angry just seeing all the signs and commercials, right? I mean, my happiness drops from that during election season, not to mention all the other things going on. So, but is there more to it? Is there more to why we aren't as happy? So here's some fun facts. So if you go back to 1950 and you look up the average income in America, the average household income in the United States in 1950 was $3,300 per year. I'm going to repeat, not $3,300 per month, per year. So the average household income was $3,300 per year. Okay. Now you got to think back then, minimum wage is 75 cents an hour. It actually went up to $1 an hour the next year, but we're talking, it was $3,300 a year. Now, If you compare that to today's dollars, right? If you factor in inflation and you look at, okay, $3,300 a year, what does that really feel like in today's dollars? You can punch that into a financial calculator. If you account for inflation, it's about $35,000 per year income, okay? So in the 50s, it would be fair to say that the average household income was $35,000 in today's dollars, okay? This was shocking. You know what the average income in 2019 was? And I'm going to actually share my screen with you because you guys got to see this. This blew my mind here. The average income in the United States was $63,000, and in 2019 it was just over $64,000. $64,000 was our average income. Now here's the crazy thing. If you go back to 1950, the average income adjusted for inflation was $35,000 per year. So we have about almost doubled, just under like 1.75 times the amount of income. So our income, okay, on average has gone up, right? Not up a little bit, up a lot, okay? So here's some other fun facts. In 1950, the average household had 3.6 people in it, okay? The average size of a house in 1950 was, get this, 950 square feet, okay? The average household in 2019 has dropped. It's 2.6 people per household. And the average size of the house is 2,322 square feet. So 2,300 square feet versus the 950 square feet in 1950, okay? So our houses are getting bigger, right? Much bigger. It's almost double or 2.5 times the size. Our cars are getting bigger, okay? Back in the 50s, the majority of families had one car, and it was a sedan. Fast forward today, almost all families have 2 cars minimum. Some have 3 cars. And in 2000, Chevy came out with the biggest personal size vehicle you could buy. It was the Chevy Suburban. It was 18 feet long, okay? 18 feet long. You know what happened the next year? Ford came out with the Ford Expedition, 19 feet long. So if you live in one of these homes that were built in the 50s, guess what? Your car doesn't fit in the garage. I think we've all seen that. You drive in some of the, here in Phoenix, Arizona, if you drive in central Phoenix, you will see a lot of the houses built in the late 40s, early 50s. They have garages, cars don't park in them. Garages are now storage for more of our stuff. Another fun fact here, the average price of a new car last year in 2019 was $37,000. That's more than half of the average national income. That's also up 6% from 2018 and 8% from 2017. So kind of painting the picture here. Our incomes have gone way up. Our houses have gone way up. Our cars are bigger. Guess what else is bigger? Food. Think about this. In the 50s and 60s, talk to your parents. My parents would say, Chris, when we went out to eat was for a special occasion. We went out to eat for a birthday, for a graduation, for an anniversary. Today, on average, people spend more money going out to eat than they do on their own groceries, right? The size of the plates have become bigger. The size of drinks have become bigger. In 1955, McDonald's started serving Coke. And so Coca-Cola you could get in a 7-ounce cup. That was the standard, 7 ounce. If you're wondering how big 7 ounces is, well, if you have children like I do, the juice box they drink is 8 ounces. So it was smaller than a children's juice box. And that was what people drank, was 7 ounces of Coca-Cola. Today, it's 128 ounces of the Teen Gulp from 7-Eleven. So plates become bigger plates. Biggie fries are no longer big enough. And the bag of popcorn is now a bucket. You can literally go to the movie theater and get a bucket of popcorn. Now let's talk about necessities. So what do we need today compared to what we needed back then? Okay. So in the 70s, the luxury items in life were called dishwashers. They were called washing machines, right? Those were the luxury items in life. Today, in our standards, right, a 90-inch flat screen TV, if it breaks, we throw it in the trash and we buy another one. And we order a new one on our cell phone, which is a necessity because it's subsidized by the government, okay? Crazy. Driving, we drive 2 times as much as we did 50 years ago. We fly 25 times as much. And think about this. A vacation just, say, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago it will be a getaway in today's standards, right? If we wanted to travel across the state for a weekend, this would be a vacation back, years ago. Today's standards, it's just a getaway. And in fact, if we want to call it a vacation, it almost seems like we have to go to another continent to make ourselves happy, right? Another interesting fact here I think you're going to like. So we've all heard the term keeping up with the Joneses. Okay, keeping up with the Joneses. And in fact, if you say that today, it has a negative annotation to it, right? Oh, there she is, or there he is, keeping up with the Joneses. You shouldn't be keeping up with the Joneses. We hear this, right? First of all, I wanted to ask, who the heck are the Joneses? Okay, so I did some digging and I tried to figure out, where did this term come from? It's not really clear, but there is something I did find that was pretty hilarious. So in the 1950s, Chevy had a magazine ad that went wild. And it was a sedan, and at the top it said, most people with the last name Jones drive Chevy. That was their headline. And it was a family, and they were sitting next to their sedan, Chevy sedan, and they were the Joneses. And basically, from that point forward, the idea that Chevy had created in their marketing was to keep up with the Joneses. And it was a good thing. Back then, you would think, wow, that's a good thing, keeping up with the Joneses. So when the Joneses go out and buy a new Chevy sedan, you should go out and buy a new Chevy sedan. When they go get a new TV, you should go get a new TV. And back then, think about this. Talk to your parents. My parents said, Chris, back then we had a TV in our house, not a TV in every bedroom, not a TV in a refrigerator, for crying out loud. We had one TV. Today, if you buy a refrigerator without a TV in it, something's wrong with you in people's minds, right? Like, well, I got a refrigerator, but it didn't have a TV in the door. Can you believe how crazy this is? This is the world we're living in. I think the reason that we've gotten this far away from where we were when we were happiest in the 50s is it's not the greed, it's the fear. It's the fear of not having what everybody else has. Now, where does that come from? Well, I think the easiest thing to do is to point, oh, it's social media's fault. It's all social media's fault, because I go on the gram, or I go on Facebook, or whatever it might be, and I see that, so-and-so is taking a vacation, or I see that so-and-so bought a new house, or they bought a new TV, or whatever it might be, or a new car, right? And we get to see the highlight reel in people's lives. But let me challenge you on this, okay? I'm not disagreeing with you that social media does enhance all of this. What I'm saying is, if social media went away tomorrow, you're still going to want stuff, because where do we get a lot of the ideas of what we want, okay? So back then it was the Joneses, right? The Joneses next door bought something, so you wanted it. Today, we don't like the Joneses. The Joneses are broke, and we know that. So when it has this negative ring to it, when you say keeping up with the Joneses, no one likes that. No one wants to be told you're keeping up with the Joneses. It's negative. So where do we get our ideas? Well, reading the book, Affluenza, the book, it opened my eyes as things I've never realized before. Do you realize every single time we watch a television show, they have the nicest of the nicest things inside there? And oftentimes the job or someone has inside that television show doesn't even equate to how they could afford that, right? But it just makes it look like that. So we think we have to have that. Case in point, if you follow the Money Peach podcast for a while, you know I am a huge fan of Seinfeld. I've seen every episode. I can recite every word, okay? If you love Seinfeld, you'll understand this. If not, let me tell you. There was a character in Seinfeld named Cosmo Kramer. Cosmo Kramer lived in Manhattan in a high-rise in an apartment, okay? Cosmo didn't have a job. He never worked ever during any of the seasons, okay? He just stayed home all day. He was a deadbeat, right? He's a funny deadbeat, but he was a deadbeat. How did he afford that? No one asked that question. It's, well, I want to have something like that. You watch television shows, it seems like every house has a giant pool. Every house has the nicest kitchen, the nicest TV, the nicest couch, the nicest outside of the house, the nicest neighborhood, the nicest cars. Everything that we see on a daily basis when we're watching our television shows or watching our social media, or you're driving around in your car, you're being marketed to at every aspect. Want to challenge me on this one? I'll steal this from Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey, one of his classes that he teaches the same principle of being afraid, not being afraid, being aware of marketing coming after you, okay? So one of the things he does, he's in an audience of, say, a couple hundred people, and he starts singing or saying slogans to different brands, and he would say the first couple words of it, and then the audience would naturally say the rest of them, okay? So he would say stuff like, Visa, and the audience would say, everywhere you want to be. Or he'd say, some things can't buy happiness, but for everything else there is MasterCard. Or he might say stuff like, melts in your mouth, not in your, and the audience says hand, right? So there's all these slogans. Now, did we go home and write these down and try to memorize them? How do we know all of these, right? It's not that it's like when you like music and you listen to music and you understand, or you memorize music, it's because you like the song and you listen to it. Do you really go out there and memorize slogans because you like it? No, It's genius marketing. We are being marketed to at a high level. So not only are we trying to stay away from the Joneses, but we are being bombarded every second of the day with some kind of marketing material. And on a second piece of that, we have made it so simple to become affluent because everything today is buy now and pay later. And in fact, you can buy now with one click. I mean, think about it. When Amazon came out, that was genius. We'll store all of your payment information. We'll store your address. You don't even have to check out and think about it. You can hit the buy now button and it's done. Think about Apple Pay. You don't have to get your money out. You don't have to get your cards out. You literally look at your phone and then you tap a button twice and you could buy whatever you want. You could be anywhere in the world, buy whatever you want, and have it sent to you almost overnight in most cases. So the reason why we had this lingering to become part of Affluenza is because we're being marketed to nonstop by every angle, right? We have access to whatever we want, whenever we want, and we don't have to pay for it now. We can pay for it later, right? And on top of that, not only do we have that going on, then we have this constant nagging in our heads that we have to be like what we see on TV, or we have to be like what we see on social media, or we have to drive a new car because, I mean, I love my child. If I don't drive a brand new car, that means I don't love my child and I'm a terrible parent, whatever it might be, right? As you can see, the craziness starts to get crazier and crazier. That's why we have TVs in the doors of a refrigerator because, I mean, who wouldn't want to go get a glass of water from the refrigerator and miss your show, right? We have to watch television at the refrigerator. That's the world we live in. Now, what does this equate to? When you live in this world, what does this equate to? Okay. So I think one of the biggest things is we see that we're not happy, right? In the 50s, we were much happier. Today, we're not as happy. Even though we can get more stuff, we have more money, we can do more things with money, we're still not happy. Here's some things that'll kind of shock you. So I looked up the savings rates in the United States compared to other countries across the world, and it wasn't pretty. Okay. So in 1982, the United States had a savings rate of 11%, meaning people saved on average 11% of what they earned, okay? It dropped down to a low in 2005 to 2008. It was down to 2.5%. Now we're back up to 5%. So we save 5% of our income a year, okay? How does that compare to other countries, okay? Singapore, for example, the highest savings rate in the world at 50%. On average, people save 50% of their income. China saves 47%. The Swiss save 34%. Germany saves 10%. And in last place, it's not us, don't worry. In last place is Denmark. Denmark and the UK actually have a negative savings rate. Denmark is the lowest at -4 and almost 4.1%. So negative savings rate. So now that we've understood like what Affluenza is, we understand, Andrea and I understand that we have it. We have the need. We want more stuff. It's natural. We're being marketed to. I mean, it's an unfair advantage it's an unfair advantage for them. It's unfair to us. I mean, how could you possibly battle this, right? How could you possibly battle? Nonstop are you being marketed to? Nonstop are you comparing yourself to others? Nonstop are we being told we can buy now, pay later? And nonstop we are being told if we don't have something, we are less than, right? So think about that. If that's coming at you every single day, it's natural for us to go out and buy more stuff to make us happy, buy more stuff to make us happy. So one of the things I wanted to look at here is before you buy something, we ask these questions. And this is something that Andrea and I put together. But when we want, and I'm not saying buying the candy bar. I'm saying before we make a big purchase, right? Before we go out, we make any kind of big purchase, we ask ourselves these things. And what I did is I put together a checklist. It's a download for you guys. It's totally free. I'll put links in the show notes, but if you go to moneypeach.com/136 download. So that's moneypeach.com/136 download. You can download this checklist and you can use it when you're going to buy something. So here's some of the questions that we ask ourselves is number one, do I need it? Do I want to maintain it? Could I borrow it from a friend? Is there something I already have that's similar? Do I have the cash saved up? How long have I wanted it? And you start going down this checklist. And as you start asking yourself these questions, then after you go through the checklist, you look back and you say, okay, now based on the answers to these questions, do we really need to buy this right now? In the checklist that I'm going to give you an example, a real world example where we applied this, where we actually did buy it still, and where we actually said, nope, we really don't need it. So it's one of the ways we can combat affluenza. Another great way is, so there was some research done, and in the 1950s and 60s, when people needed something, they would go to the store and buy it, The purpose of the store was to buy the thing that you needed and come home. Okay, that makes sense. That doesn't seem like it's illogical, right? But today, the store is actually a place to kill boredom. It's actually a place to go when you have nothing else to do. Okay, case in point, the Mall of America. They did a study on this. So we have malls all over the country. Okay, but the Mall of America, people actually they go there for vacation. That's their vacation, right? The ability to go somewhere and travel to shop is the vacation. They went to the Mall of America. They started interviewing random people that were pushing shopping carts, and almost everybody said, they asked, what did you come here to buy? Almost everybody said, I didn't come here to buy anything. We're here on vacation. We just wanted to see the biggest mall in the world. While we're here, we might as well shop. So another thing you can do is realize shopping is not a sport. Shopping should not be there to kill boredom. If you're there to kill boredom, think about this. You're already being marketed to. Now you're walking into the arena to be marketed to even at a higher level. If you have a problem with overspending or falling into the trap of affluenza, killing time by shopping is not going to help you. Okay. So have a list of activities planned out in advance that if you do get bored, there are things that you can do inside of boredom besides going shopping. Another great way is to get on a budget. Okay. To combat affluenza, getting on a budget's a big deal. Okay. It's the number one reason that Andrea and I were able to create a plan, live on a plan, save money, pay off all of our debt, and now build wealth. If we didn't have this one tool called our budget, or we call it a cash flow plan, we would not have the success we've had in our life with money. Guarantee you that. So live on a budget. Okay. Here's the nice thing is I want you to go and get stuff. I'm not saying you should be a minimalist. There's minimalists out there. I think they're great. Not for me. I'm not going to live in a tiny house. That's not for me. Okay. I can't live in a 150 square foot home and like they do on that show, Tiny Houses. Can't do it. Okay. But there's a balance between being a minimalist, right? And being somebody who is part of affluenza after that term, right? The nonstop desire for material wealth and things. Okay. So one of the ways to combat that is have a budget. And in your budget, allocate a certain amount of money to buy stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, to buy stuff. But what happens when you do a cash flow plan or a budget, Andrea and I do this all the time. We want stuff. We want stuff all month long. However, we get to the end of the month, or maybe we get to the middle of the month and we realize the amount of money that we set aside to buy stuff, we don't have any more money for, so we can't buy more stuff, right? So that's another thing. This is taken from my wife. My wife, if you guys follow her at all, she's big on focusing and practicing gratitude, contentment. And so she shared this with me, and I'm going to share it with you guys, okay? She said, practice gratitude. In order to have contentment, you must first have gratitude, okay? Contentment is finding joy in what we already have in our lives, and it breaks the cycle of continually wanting more. So case in point, my wife likes to get up in the morning. She gets her cup of coffee. She goes and sits on the back patio where it's quiet, okay? She starts her day off by practicing gratitude because she's grateful for the hot cup of coffee. She's grateful for the sun coming up and hitting her in the face. She's grateful for the kids not screaming at her, and she's grateful for the sound of a bird chirping, right? She's grateful for the things she has in that moment. She's not sitting there going, man, I wish our yard was nicer. Man, I wish we had a bigger pool. Man, I wish we had a pool. Oh my goodness, I wish I had this, or I wish I had that, or only if I had this, I would be happy, okay? So practice gratitude, have contentment, and also take control of your attitude, right? We get the choice to be happy. Happiness does not come as a result, I should say long-term happiness does not come as a result of more stuff. I will agree. One time, Andrea and I bought a new car. We will never do that again, but we bought a brand new car. And that first day we were happy. That first week we were happy. That first month when the bill came, we had to make our first payment. That wasn't a happy moment. So the happiness is not going to last long through stuff. You get to choose to be happy. And my wife always says, you have to have practice gratitude. You have to have gratitude in order to have contentment, and take control of your attitude by not waiting for things to make you happy, but deciding to be happy. And you get there by being grateful and content with the things that you already have. Okay. Another way I think to control affluenza is give to the amount it hurts. It sounds crazy, but I will tell you this. About 5 years ago, Andrea and I started being consistent with our tithing. Okay. We have not missed now since we started that. And I'm not saying I'm not shaming you or telling you have to go tithe, but I'm saying tithing for us was giving to the point it hurt. Okay. Whatever that number is, whatever that amount for you is your amount. But once we started giving to the amount that it kind of hurt a little bit, I wouldn't say it like devastated us, but kind of poked at us a little bit, like, ooh, man, we could buy more stuff with that money. It allowed us to really be grateful for the stuff we had, and it really allowed contentment into our hearts. So, lastly, I'm going to go back to this, is stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. We all know this. The Joneses are broke, okay? And the Joneses have been replaced with what you see on television, okay? That's not real. The Joneses have been replaced for what we see on social media. Remember, that's the highlight reel, okay? That's the 0.5% of the wins are always showing up on social media. There's other things going on that we can't see, and the reason why is because we don't want to see it, because people don't want us to see it, right? So going back to that, stop keeping up with the Joneses, live on a budget. And if you want, download our free checklist. That checklist is going to walk you step by step. It's kind of like a word map. And you'll go through that and think, okay, either yes, I'm going to go ahead and buy this, or no, I'm not. It's going to make you feel a lot better that you had a formula to make your decision. So head on over to moneypeach.com/136 download to get that. And thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for being here. This was fun. I love talking about Affluenza. I love talking about ways that we could be better with our money. And sometimes it's not just getting a new tool or a new budget plan. Sometimes it's just kind of keeping a mindset on how money works, why it works the way it does, and how at every angle of life we are being marketed to, sold to, getting told to buy this, buy that, buy now. We're done with that. We're done with that, right? We are going to go back to the happy times, right? And it's a choice. We get to be happy. Remember, 1957, we made $35,000 a year. We lived in a 950 square foot home. There was one car in the entire family, one TV, and we were the happiest we'd ever been. Fast forward to 2020, we make $64,000 a year. We have a 2,300 square foot home, a 19-foot Ford Excursion. We're not happy unless we hop to a different continent to take a vacation, right? And for the most part, surveys show that we're miserable, right? More money, more problems. Take care of yourself. Don't be Affluenza. And if you have any questions and you want to learn more about this, I'll put a link in the show notes to the book. I think it's an amazing book. I highly recommend you guys either listen to it, download it, read it. You won't be sorry. So thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place, with another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. Take care.